Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Ask Amity show. Today, we want to talk about what are the consequences of getting what's called a cheap trust. So a lot of times, we get questioned, there's a lot of these online service providers or these form sellers that you can just fill in this form and everything's done. So today, we wanted to explore with you why we don't recommend that and why you should actually avoid all this these type of services. So the first thing is that, estate planning lawyers, we can actually provide you a lot of accurate information that you may not actually know. So the first thing is, we want to make sure that what estate plan that is created, your will, your trust, your power of attorney, all of these really important documents are properly executed, right? So you don't want to just have something filled out and then when it's time for you to actually have to use it, you're being turned away and saying, these are not enforceable, these were improperly executed, there's a conflict within the document. And at that point, it's going to be too late for you to really do anything about it. So it's really important to understand that what an estate planning attorney provides is not only just the documents that's ultimately written, but it's also a lot of the advice and a lot of the accurate information that is necessary for the laws to be able to enforce what's being drafted, what's being executed. So that's number one, is that estate planning attorneys can direct you to ensure that your estate plan is properly executed in order to be enforceable.
Yeah, and one of the common misconceptions about estate planning is that it's a one-size-fits-all kind of thing where everyone's estate plan is the same. And that's the case if you use the same forms, right? That's the case if you hire an attorney to do it for $500. It's like they're not going to have the time or the energy to put into setting up an estate plan that actually works for your family if you're doing it for free yourself or if you're hiring an attorney to do it for $500, right? And so estate planning is not one size fits all. Every family is different. And I know for most of us, we think, we're just like the average family, but we're not, because estate planning is really about your preferences, right? What do you want your estate plan to do for your family? How do you want to provide opportunities for them that they don't otherwise might have if they don't have their inheritance? And every child's different, right? Your child might need the money to go to college. Your child might need the money to stay in the house. Your child might need the money to start a new business. Those all need to be planned for if you were to support your child throughout those types of different endeavors and needs. And so, for example, one of the biggest questions is, who do you want to receive your asset, right? It could be a friend, it could be a charity, it can be your uncle or even your parents. So estate planning is not one size fits all kind of thing. And do you want to make sure that your spouse doesn't waste all the assets and leave nothing for the kids? What if your spouse remarries, right? How do we protect against remarriage or squandering the assets for the kids and the kids get nothing? So there's certain things that you can do with your estate plan to make sure that even if you pass first, that you have the protections in place to make sure that your kids are the ones that are going to inherit what you've left them and not your spouse's next spouse, right? And minor children, it's very different treating minor children versus adult children. So the way that you plan for minor children, completely different from how you plan for adult children. And another question to ask yourself is, do you want your children to be overnight millionaires or overnight 100,000ers, right? What are they going to do with the money? Are they going to know how to spend it, invest it, grow it, and generate generational wealth? There's ways that you can do it inside a trust that make sure that your kids don't squander their assets. So those need custom planning. It's not a one size fits all. And if you have a blended family, meaning if you or your spouse had kids from a previous relationship, you have to plan for that as well. Because if you just took a simplest living trust off off the internet and you say, hey, if both of us pass away, then both of our kids get it. Let's say you have two kids together. Well, what if he has a kid? That kid might come out and say, hey, I deserve a third of it, right? So those are things we need to plan for as well. And it's very different for every plan. And another good example is if your children have special needs, do they need government benefits? A lot of times, if your adult children or minor children receive an inheritance from you, that might disqualify them from receiving government benefits. So how do you set up an estate plan, a living trust that has special needs plan in place to make sure that they can receive their inheritance and still keep the government benefits? So those are some of the common examples that I can think of right now. There's so much more. Every family is different. So make sure that you set up an estate plan that's truly going to work for your family. And another concept to really ingrain is buyer beware, right? You get what you pay for. If you do it for free, obviously you're not going to have the expertise needed to help. It's kind of like if you get sick. Like if you're really sick, let's say you feel a lump in your body. Do you go on WebMD and diagnose it yourself and say, oh, okay, this is a common flu, I'm not going to do anything about it? No, you go to a specialist, you go to a doctor, and you figure it out because it's something big in your life. And same thing with estate planning. You probably have a house, you've got money, so those are your biggest assets. And you want to make sure that all your hard-earned assets that you've accumulated during your lifetime is going to go to your children, right? And a really good example of that is we want to make sure that part of your estate plan or all of your estate plan, part of it should and all of it should work. So make sure that there's no mistakes in your estate plan. All the documents are valid because if you do it yourself, it might not be valid. And so you've put together a plan that's not going to work at the end of the day. Your kids are going to go to probate court. One kid's going to get more than the other, whatever it is, the plan might be messed up. So make sure that you do it right and that you hire an experienced attorney, whether it's us or someone else, just do it right for your family. It's the best last gift that you can truly give your family.
Yeah, and as Edmund mentioned, there's a lot of complex family and financial situations that you really need to talk to an experienced estate lawyer that can really give you some advice as to what may be necessary to make sure that your wishes are fulfilled. And Edmund kind of went through a little bit of this, but we wanted to mention some of these kind of more complicated or more complex family situations. It may include, if you're in a second marriage or a later marriage, you own one or more businesses, you own real estate in more than one state, you have a disabled person, you have minor children, or if you feel like you have a problem child, or if you don't have any children at all, you need to really sit down and think about who you want to inherit your estate. And then, also perhaps you want to leave some or all of your assets to a charity. How should that, be done? And maybe, because of that, you get some sort of tax benefit from it as well. And then also, if you have substantial assets in your 401k or in your IRA, if you're recently divorced, or if you recently lost a spouse or another family member, these are all more complicated situations where it makes sense to sit down with an estate planning attorney to go through these things and see what your options are. Make sure that what your wishes are is that they're going to be so these are the things that we would be able to provide to you from our experience, to make sure that what you intend is going to be enforceable.
Yeah, and then the last last real issue that we see a lot, which is huge, is the funding aspect of your trust. So when you go to a discount trust place or maybe with an attorney who hasn't been practicing this area of law for very long, they either forget to fund your trust, or they tell you to go and handle the funding part of it. And of course, funding a trust is not as simple and straight and easy as most people think. It can be very complicated, and it can have huge implications financially. So upfront, you may be saving money by going to someone who's inexperienced, or going to someone who's going to tell you to go and fund the trust yourself. But the implications of that could be huge financially. So for example, real estate is a huge issue that we see coming through our office all the time, that was either funded incorrectly or never even funded at all. So that is something that hopefully by the time you come to us can be reversed, but most of the time as we see clients coming through to our doors, it's irreversible. So that's because somebody's already passed, or the property's already being up for sale or something like that. It's very, very important that you do it the right way for the asset that represents the majority of most people's assets. So make sure you go to an experienced real estate attorney who is going to walk you through how to fund the trust, or who's going to actually do the funding for you. And here at Amity Law Group for real estate, we actually will carry that on, because we know it is one of the most important property, most value to anyone's estate. So we make sure we handle that and make sure that it's done correctly. Some of the examples I've seen recently that come through our office that that wasn't done the way that it should be done was, when you go to maybe an attorney and ask how to transfer property to your children, and they simply say, "Oh, just add the names of your children to the deed now." Well, sounds simple enough, sounds harmless enough, sounds straightforward enough, and sounds like it would achieve what you want. But in reality, it doesn't. And it's going to cost a lot of money in capital gains tax for your children if you were to do it that way. So, I cannot stress enough how important it is to speak to someone who is experienced. And why not us, especially since we give you free 20-minute consultations. So that's our episode for today. Thank you for tuning in. And again, we are more than happy to talk to you about any of these issues. Please call us and let's discuss.